Netflix has delivered us many projects over the streaming service's 15-year timeline, many of which have garnered much hate from the public eye. However, some projects have become critically acclaimed pieces of film and TV. For example, original movies who have been nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars include The Irishman, Marriage Story, and Don't Look Up. The list goes on. However, despite the streaming giant's prolific roster of hit flicks, there are many that fall under the category I like to call doo-doo doggy shitty style. One of these projects goes by the name of Eli, a 2019 horror mystery film that follows the story of a young boy, Eli, who has a rare medical condition that prevents him from exposing himself to the outside elements. So, whilst he seeks treatment for his disease in a medical facility, he begins to encounter supernatural threats. Or are they? Now, as a horror movie buff, I went into this movie with open arms, as most Netflix original horror movies such as The Ritual, Apostle, and 1922 are my top 10 favorite horror films. But boy oh boy, Netflix did something wrong after 2018. They did something real wrong. Something terribly wrong. Something that would ruin their lousy careers for the rest of their lives. The movie opens up with our protagonist Eli waking up from a pretty horrible nightmare in which he sees himself in an open field where he sees a blurry image of his family around a picnic table, but he soon begins to choke and turn red, rashes covering his body as he begins to panic, and then he wakes. When he wakes, we are introduced to Eli's parents. His mother, a stereotypical crazy mommy who loves a widowed baby so much she doesn't want to see anything bad happen to him. And the tough, brooding dad who is completely emotionally unavailable for his son. Our initial impression of Eli is that he suffers from some kind of autoimmune disease, as he spent the majority of his life within a plastic decontaminated bubble, unable to experience life outside. We see that the trio is off to see some doctor, ideally to get whatever the hell is up with Eli fixed. As they drive, Eli performs a shitty card trick for mommy, in which he guesses the wrong card and Rosemary lies to her baby, and then doubles down, saying, "I wouldn't lie to you, baby." Right, Paul? Nudging the hubby for some assistance with numbnuts in the back seat. Already, we're seeing what becomes a common theme of this movie. Lies, lies, and more lies. As we arrive to CGI Manor, I mean, come on. Netflix had to go on Netflix on us with a poorly generated mansion that probably cost upwards of $100,000 to make. Now, I'm not saying I could do any better, but I do think that some B-roll of a random mansion in the countryside isn't that hard. But that's just my opinion. The trio walk to the front door, which is adorned in a unique pattern of crosses. This is our second allusion to the religious undertones of this film. Our first being a billboard outside the motel, with a Bible scripture on it and a pretty weird drawing of Jesus. Over the intercom we hear the voice of Dr. Horn, who instructs Eli to enter the decontamination chamber by himself. As he exits, he's greeted by our three nurses who welcome Eli and his parents. Dr. Horn suggests to Eli that he can take off his suit, exclaiming the air in the house is clean. Eli is of course hesitant to this idea and chooses to keep his suit on for now. As Dr. Horn takes the group upstairs to their rooms, Eli looks back at the two nurses who go to fetch his luggage, as they too are staring back at Eli. Definitely making the audience suspicious of these two, as they don't exactly have the nicest looks on their faces. Dr. Horn then proceeds to explain the procedure that they will carry out on Eli, with a bunch of made up blah blah medical biology blue lad language, as she is showing them to their rooms. Eli begins to interrogate Horn on her career, and asks how many patients she has had, and if she has cured them all. As if our suspicions weren't high enough with the other two nurses, Horn has to go ahead and brush off Eli's question by reassuring him he will be fine. More lies. God, we really can't trust anyone in this movie anymore. Taken to his room, Eli finally builds up the trust for Dr. Horn and the courage in himself to take off his suit. This is because he's excited by the fact that he can now take a shower, which this little greasy slime ball looks like he hasn't done in a while. Then, in an emotional display, Eli and his mother finally lock hands for the first time outside of the plastic barrier. Whilst Rosemary reunites with her baby, broody Papa offers a reluctant one-armed hug. Seems like Dad doesn't fancy his genetically screwed up baby. The lies and vague comments continue as we see Rose and Paul cozying up in bed together. Paul looking a little worried, saying he just has a lot in his mind, whilst Rose says he just has to have faith that the procedure will work. Paul replies with a snarky comment saying he's always been a faithful man. Back in his room, Eli begins to have his first paranormal encounter. Looking out his window, someone breathes on the glass and Eli freaks out, wanting to mommy for cuddles. The next morning, Eli expresses his concerns to Dr. Horn, but she assures him it's probably a side effect from the medication. Bad dreams. Yet again, we don't know what's true and what is not, as Eli's perspective isn't one we can fully trust, as he is currently on medication, and neither is Dr. Horn's, as we don't quite know her motivations. Eli begins his first treatment with Dr. Horn. As he lays down on the operating table, he begins to nod off from the local anesthetic. Suddenly, in the reflection of one of the chairs, he begins to see another example of horrible CGI in this movie, in the form of a spooky ghost boy. He blacks out. We see a nightmare scenario of Eli now facing upward, pinned down to the operating table. The three nurses standing over him, he begins to panic and begs the nurses to let him go, exclaiming, "It burns, Dr. Horn, it burns." Getting barely any response from the nurses, his skin turns red, and he screams in pain and agony. Then, he wakes. He meets a girl, Haley, on the other side of the window in his room. She seems to know a lot about Eli's condition, as she has had experiences with past patients. Mr. Magic Man, in a lousy attempt to swoon the redhead with a magic trick, fails epically. Haley shows him a real trick of lighting a twig on fire with her mind, but she turns around to execute it. Eli, confused on how she performed this magic trick without the use of a match, asks her how she does it, but she replies with, "A magician never reveals her secrets." He asks if she will come in, but she declines as she has a weird feeling about the place and says that Dr. Horn doesn't like her that much. On his way back to his room, Eli has another paranormal encounter. Hearing a thud in a nearby room while the lights flicker, he investigates. Shining his flashlight, he sees the apparition of a girl, contorting her body. Eli tries to run away, but the ghost girl chases after him. He eventually falls to the floor, and the ghost girl is nowhere to be seen. Suddenly, a light shines through a curtain behind him. As he turns around, he begins to see the silhouette of the ghost girl. But, all of a sudden, the ghost girl creeps up, and as she opens the curtain, boom! Daddy's here! And he scolds Eli for sneaking around all by himself at such a late hour. At dinner, Eli begs Mommy to believe him and his ghostly tales of ghouls roaming the halls, but we know she isn't buying it. Daddy, of course, looking pissed as ever, just wants to eat his food in peace without Rat Boy ruining the taste in his mouth. In bed, there continues to be more substantial evidence that this house is quite haunted. As Eli's closet appears to open by itself, the reflection in the mirror catches something lurking behind the curtains. Eli investigates, but nothing is found. Heading to the window, he begins to write his name again, but someone rubs it out, and instead writes a lie. Seems like the spirit is trying to send a message to Eli that everything here is bogus. Retreating from the window, Eli bumps into the closet and sees in the reflection the spirit that is trying to communicate. He falls to the ground and someone flips him over. It's his dad, which casts doubt on the audience as we don't know if what we saw was real or not. Eli's now in for his second phase of treatment. This time he is situated with a vice around his head. As he is given another injection, he begins to stress out. His skin turns red. Dr. Horn begins drilling into the back of his head as she says they have no other choice. Okay. At dinner, Eli's trust for Dr. Horn begins to understandably fade, repeating the same quote Hades said earlier on, calling Dr. Horn shifty, exclaiming that he thinks Horn is actually making him sicker, and saying he wants to leave. Dada gets pissed and says that Eli has two options. He can either leave now and stay sick forever, or he can stay and get better. It seems after every procedure, the supposed supernatural activity gets worse. As Eli attempts to take a shower, he sees an apparition in the mirror. He tries to stay vigilant and ignore it, but when it reaches out to grab him, he can't help but think it's real. He runs and hides in the wardrobe, but it gets pushed over. He gets out and now sees his name etched into the door of the wardrobe over and over again. But within the words, the word lie sticks out like a sore thumb. More and more hints that everything Eli has been told thus far is just a lie to protect him. The adults walk in and see the aftermath. Eli explains what happened, but again, no one believes him. Dr. Horn goes as far as to mention that none of her other patients saw ghosts like Eli did, But this is quickly disproven when Eli meets Haley again, who tells him that a previous patient named Perry told her that he saw ghosts. Lies, lies, lies. Everybody can't help themselves but to lie. God, maybe Haley's even lying now. I don't even know anymore. After Eli's meeting with Haley, he gets jumped by the Boo brothers and is dragged to the decontamination chamber. The others get to him right on time before the outside elements reach Eli. As they try to treat Eli, he mentions the ghosts and Perry, which clearly affects Dr. Horn. Rose tries to calm Eli down with the regular blow out the candles bit, but Eli ain't buying it now. Not able to trust his parents, he grows frustrated. Smashing his hand on the glass, blood rushing down his hand, he passes out. We cut to Paul and Horn having a conversation about Eli and his treatment, but when Rose joins in, the topic quickly changes, suggesting that Paul and Dr. Horn know more than they are letting on and have clearly been in cahoots the whole time. They agree that they should start phase 3 of Eli's treatment, and Rose offers to give Eli his pill to make him sleep. However, when Rose finally convinces Eli to take his pill after comforting him, it is revealed to us that Eli didn't even swallow his pill, suggesting that he still doesn't even trust his own mother. Staring at the knocked over wardrobe upside down, it appears that the letters LIE are actually numbers 317. This changes Eli's mind, as he now believes that these spirits are trying to help him, not hurt him, communicating with him to uncover the truth about what is really happening in this facility. Later in the night, Eli sneaks out of bed, down to the medical wing of the building, entering in the magical code of 317, which grants him access. He manages to break into Horn's office and begins snooping around her files, uncovering the truth behind all the other treatments with Horn's previous patients. It is revealed that after each treatment they got worse and worse, and finally, after the third and final treatment, dead. Meanwhile, Rose learns the exact same thing, but this time it's from Paul, who reveals he knew that there was a risk, saying that for every chance he could pull through, there's also a chance that he won't. Rose is shocked as she was told by Paul that Horn had saved every one of her patients. Another vague comment is made as the two start arguing. Rose being understandably furious that he lied to her, Paul turns it back around, wondering how she can blame him for anything after what she did. The argument wakes Dr. Horn, nearly catching Eli in the process. As she gets to Rose, she is already packing up the car ready to leave. Trying to convince her to stay and go ahead with the procedure, she lies, saying she can save Eli and make it work, but only if Rose is by her side. More and more lies, which somehow Rose falls for, and comes back inside. Eli in a panic encounters his father, who reminisces on a dream where the two were playing ball together and hopes that they can do that in the future. In the heartwarming moments where we finally see Paul show some emotion to his son, it is ruined because it was all a ruse to inject Eli with a sedative, revealing Paul is still on Dr. Horn's side. The nurses showing up to take Eli. In the struggle to take him to the operating room, a loud noise is heard outside. Looking to the window, we see that the car has unexplainably exploded. Eli breaks free by biting one of the nurses. Barricading himself in Horn's bedroom, he uncovers the truth about Dr. Horn and the nurse's background through a photograph. The nurses are actually nuns. Of course they're nuns. Why didn't I think of this the whole time? The crosses, the religious allusions at the start of the film. How could I be so stupid? Eli gets distracted by a bug, which seems to be leading him to a secret doorway that leads him to a subterranean level of the house. Investigating further, he enters into what appears to be a ritual room, which contains a large circular container with religious symbols and a crucifix on top of an altar. The group catches up to him, locking him inside the chamber. Dr. Horn says they have to keep him in there because he knows. Eli begins to panic and hyperventilate. Skin turns red, the whole shebang, you know the deal by now. This kid gets stressed, his skin turns red, come on, keep up. He wakes up a while later and he's fine, realizing now that he has been lied to and that everything he has experienced thus far is completely the truth. He grows angry, banging on the cage, screaming, "Let me out," the lights flickering at the exact same time, suggesting that he has been the one that has been responsible for the electrical problems happening throughout the house. As they prepare for the final procedure, Rosie wants to see her baby one last time, venturing to the basement to find him. She apologizes to him and admits to him that he was never allergic to the outside world, and that this is all her fault, and not his. saying that she would explain everything after the final treatment. Eli suddenly falls to the ground, and this creates a panic in Rose as she swings open the door to save her baby. The little trickster jumps up and attacks her, escaping. All of a sudden, Eli's got powers? Running away from his father, he turns and causes him to slip with his mind, this being indicated by the lights flickering. Locking himself in the sunroom, he tried to break the window with a fire extinguisher. All of a sudden, Haley appears, encouraging him to break free. She says that he is much stronger than the others. He is then dragged away by his father, Haley encouraging Eli to not be afraid. Meanwhile, in the dungeon, Rose grows curious of her surroundings, deciding to open the circular container in the room. She discovers the bodies of the other patients inside, wrapped in bags and adorned with necklaces with some sort of symbol on it. Rose now realizes that Dr. Horn's intent is to kill Eli and not save him. She enters the operating room, where everyone surrounds Eli strapped to a table. She demands answers, but Horn feeds her the same bullshit that she did earlier. Rose passes the knife she found earlier off to Paul, who she thinks will help her, but evidently Paul immediately hands the knife to Dr. Horn. The procedure begins, Eli growing upset. The lights flicker. Dr. Horn produces a book with the same symbol we've seen in the ritual dungeon, and she's also wearing religious garments. She splashes him with holy water, and of course Eli says it burns. Now we know that this is what they were injecting him with during all the procedures, as Eli had the exact same reaction. Now, this has turned into some full-blown exorcism. The movie is now taking a complete 180 in the last 5 minutes. As Horn goes in for the kill, she is stopped by Eli's new telekinetic abilities, and he is now in full control of his son of Satan side, getting Horn to stab herself with the dagger. Now it's time for Eli to absolutely wail on these bitches. Burning his restraints away, his eyes turn red. He lets out a scream and everyone is thrown away. As the nurses attempt to escape, Eli catches them all, lining them up like dominoes and turn them upside down into upside-down crucifixes, levitating them in the air Black Adam style. He confronts his mother, demanding to know what he really is, Rose only replying with "my son." In frustration, he lights the nurses ablaze. Finally, Rose cuts to shit and reveals she has made a deal with the devil to have a baby after years of failed attempts. Of course, Satan, the master of lies, promised Rose that her son wouldn't turn out like him. But of course, this movie has shown us otherwise, and has told us that the devil isn't the only one who lies. Everyone in this goddamn movie does. Paul attempts a backstab on Eli, but he gets caught, and Eli performs the best kill of the movie by imploding Paul's face in on itself. Nice. Eli's still pissed that Mommy yanks her cross necklace and demands she denounce her faith and turn to Satan. I guess he's just fully embraced it at this point. As he leaves the house, his footprints set afire behind him, the whole house in flames. Eli steps outside, breathing in air. He finally seems at peace, knowing who he truly is. Joined by his mentally distraught mother, guess who's waiting for them? Haley. Reiterating what she said before, she knew he was stronger than the others. Okay, I guess she's also a child of Satan, and she explains to Eli that she couldn't help him because Dad says you gotta earn your place. So that means that everyone before Eli is also a devil baby. Gotcha. With a long road ahead to see our real daddy, Rose is told she has to drive. As she gets into the car, she's an emotional wreck, not able to start the car. She panics and now Eli is the one who has to calm her down, performing the same breathing techniques and candle blowing shtick that Rose always did with Eli earlier on in the film. Our story ends with the group heading off into the night on a literal highway to hell to go see our devil daddy, the house burning to ashes behind them. I suppose after a few watch-throughs this movie could grow on someone. I personally hate it less than I did after my first watch, which is why for a first-time watcher this movie could leave a viewer with more questions than answers. The film's initial direction seems to be a classic haunted house take in the horror genre, but in the last 5 minutes decides it wants to be a mashup of The Exorcist and Rosemary's Baby auditioning for a spot in the Conjuring universe of films. The acting performances in this movie are memorable, especially from the young Charlie Shotwell who plays Eli. However, nothing can redeem the questionable CGI work in this film. All this leaving me with 1 hour and 38 minutes I will never get back.